Hello guys, today we have a guest who perfectly embodies the overlap between high-level sport and smart business. He is an Indian chess grandmaster and FIDE trainer who has represented the country with 11 international medals and even held his own in a classical game against former world championship challenger Fabiano Caruana. But his impact goes beyond the board. He is also the innovative founder and CEO of ChessGaja, a global online academy that is using the principles of the game to sharpen the minds of all students over the world. Please join me in welcoming a true master of the game and of business, Grandmaster Priyadharshan Kannappan.
Nice to meet you, Adrit.
Nice to meet you, sir.
Yeah,
Okay,
please.
okay. So you earned the IM title at 16 and the GM title at 23. Can you describe the mental shift required to go from being a top junior to earning the final Grandmaster norm?
Hello, Adrit. Yeah, when I was an IM, it was actually a very long journey from IM to GM. So around 2009 is when I became an IM, and then when I became a GM, it was around 2016. So about 7 years, I was chasing the norms, the rating one by one. And I think the major mindset shift from IM to GM, in a way, was like uh, for a long time I had some sort of pressure, like I was chasing the title. I really wanted to be a GM, but at one point when the timeline kept going longer and longer, that as I said, it took around 7 years. I slowly started to kind of let go that pressure. I was like, okay, if the title comes, I'll take it, kind of a thing, where I did not put myself under too much pressure. Let's say by the year 4 or 5, I was still chasing the title, but I was not consciously chasing it. I was like, I'll just keep playing, and if a good result happens, and then if things go well, I'll get my norm and then the title, kind of it. First 2 3 years, I was more consciously chasing it, and the norms were not happening. So that is one major mindset shift, I would say. Other than that, I would also mention that one of the major things as I was chasing the GM title is I actually started going back to basics of chess in a way. What I mean by that is like, um, I was focusing very basic, like calculation abilities, like just strengthening it further and further compared to IM level calculation. As GM, you need to out calculate your opponents even further, and so on. And one major quality which I already had when I was an IM, but which I think further strengthened it on my journey to becoming a GM, is defending worse positions. So there were a lot of positions where maybe I should be clearly worse, and then I just like defend it extremely, like put up the best fight, and save that position. And at this point in time, as I was talking about defense, the one of the best games that I defended from a clearly worse position was against Caruana in a tournament called Millionaire Open in 2015, when I was still an IM, and he was like, I think, world number two. He was 2-8, 1-0 or something at that point in time. And I had a very like a worse queen versus. We both had queen and bishop. I was playing black, and he was slowly outplaying me. But I did not resign the game. I kept fighting and fighting, and then he made one big error in a very advantageous position, which completely let me get back into the game. And then the game ended in a draw. I had small winning chances, but he played very precisely, and the game ended in a draw. And these kind of areas is where I think an IM versus a GM difference happens. Extremely strong defense, that you don't just resign and walk away if you get a worse position. And another aspect being ability to calculate much longer or deeper than compared to when you're an IM. And other thing, this Caruana game that I was mentioning about, we recently had this very tragic news of Grandmaster Naroditsky passing away, right? So Grandmaster Naroditsky wrote about this specific game in US Chess Life magazine, this Caruana game against mine, and he annotated it for 2 pages, and he explained it in depth, how if you defend with absolute best without resigning, you can even kind of like create miraculous chances against the world's best of the best players, kind of it. And it was a wonderful article. So and also, I just wanted to add here that about Naroditsky and the whole thing, like every player has said, it's kind of, it's a great chess player. He was great ambassador of the game. And when I heard the news, first thing to came to my mind was this article that he had written, with this game. And so, it was kind of sad what happened. But yeah, so that's what I would say, the IM to GM transition and the whole thing connected to that. Yeah.
Thank you. So I'm going to the next question. So what did the final hurdle demand of you?
From being IM to GM, you're asking about it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, as I said, I was chasing it for a long time, and at one point, what happened is, uh, I was combining it with my college degree. I was doing my undergrad degree in US, and at the same time, I was chasing the norm. So I made my final third norm on the 2500 rating just as I finished my undergraduate degree and I was going to join my graduate program. So I had a summer holiday. So I think one major thing why I managed to score my final norm at my holidays is because maybe I had less pressure than when I was combining it with my college degree at the same time, because it was summer holidays, I said. So I had more time to devote to chess and study and prepare chess. So becoming a GM, I think, is majorly like, one, you need to consistently train. Another thing is there's always a small amount of luck involved. So how this luck, we call it Kesa in chess, right? Like the goddess of chess and luck and all that. The thing is, when you put really hard work in chess and so on, you get these tournaments where maybe one or two games you should have lost, but then you miraculously like either draw or even win. So the final norm where I made, I mean, the third GM norm, I got it in a tournament in Philadelphia in 2016. I remember in that tournament, one of the rounds, my opponent in an equal position just completely like out of nowhere did a touch move blunder, and he's like a 2300 rated player, and the game should have ended in a draw. He just made a touch move blunder and he lost. Like, a terrible, terrible blunder he made. There was one more game where the result should not have been in my favor, but I managed to score a point in that tournament. So, if you put the genuine effort, in the tournaments where you make the norm, this kind of luck happens at least in one or two games. If not, it's very, very like, it rarely happens for any player to become a GM without one or two games they are being lucky, where they should have, most likely the game should not have gone in their favor, but they end up scoring point in it. But that luck is purely generated, I would say, in terms of how much effort you have put. Kind of it balances it out. So the world kind of wants you to become a grandmaster at that point because you worked so hard for it. So the hurdle, as I said, is mainly balancing my education and chess, was it. And once I did it, I managed to get some free time, and I managed to get my third norm as well in that process. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. So I'm going to the next question.
Sure.
So you authored the modernized Berlin Wall defense. What attracted you to the Berlin and what does it take to write an opening book that tries to modernize one of the most solid defenses in the game?
So my connection with Berlin Defense in Lopez goes back to somewhere around 2003, because there was a very famous World Championship match between Kasparov and Kramnik, where Kramnik played or pretty much popularized Berlin to the world, and based on that, I got fascinated about that opening when I was about 10 years old, and I learned it around that time, and that was actually one of the main openings when someone played e4 against me as white. So I had a huge number of like years of experience in Berlin from 2003 all the way up to like 2018, like 15 years of playing experience, a lot of practical experience more than theoretical experience. And I had played it with all sorts of rating levels, players who are like my opponents were 1900, my opponents were grandmasters, IEMs, and all. Like I've tried it against all sorts of rating opponents. So I felt like when I wanted to write a book around 2018, I wanted to write on a topic that I knew very well personally, and also something that I could really connect to start, my first book, so that I can confidently write on the topic. So that's when I decided to pick Berlin, because I had some ideas which were comparatively unique in Berlin than what was normally played in most of the games in Berlin. And so I shared those ideas in that book, and it took me about close to 1.5 years to write that book. I wrote it in phases, like and uh, so that was the major reason why I wrote the book. I just want to share what I knew very well, and some of the ideas that I wrote. I would say still some of the novelties here and there in the book is actually not yet played. Whenever I look at the latest theory, there are still some ideas from the book that can still be played, even after 5 6 years since the book has been published. I think around 4 5 years it's been since the book has been published. So that's kind of the motivation, and why I wrote the book. And the book is primarily targeted, I would say, for players who want to learn it for the first time, or who would be around, let's say, 2000 to 2300, up to that rating level. I think they'll find it extremely useful. And also, I wanted to kind of break this myth that was there, that Berlin is a very drawish opening, that black players generally play Berlin if they want to make a draw. I feel like if you know Berlin very well, you can actually score a lot of points with black side in Berlin. And I have done it many a time. I've scored a lot of good wins with black, and that's one of the things I wanted to convey through that book as well. Yeah.
Okay, so we are jumping to the next question. So, what is the most common misuse of chess engine like Stockfish you see in your students' training? Can you walk us through one Stockfish approved move that a human should never play and explain why a human mind must overrule the machine in that specific instance?
So, as a coach, we often use engines to train students because it helps us to understand the position very quickly. But at the same time, where things go wrong often is that the students also use Stockfish during the class, or uh, as if we give some sort of a training material that they have to work on, and so on. Uh, the major thing is, the students want to know the detail or depth of the position immediately. So if, let's say, they play a tournament game, they immediately go and run Stockfish, like how if you play an online game, you immediately get the accuracy, and you get the like a report of your how you did, how many brilliant moves you played, how many bad moves you played. But what the context it completely misses is that uh, Stockfish evaluates a position from its perspective, where it is like a 3500 plus rated engine, right? But you as a player, or anyone who uses Stockfish, their rating will not be 3500. It could be 1000 if the player is 1000 rated. It could be a 1500 if a player is 1500 rated, and so on. So there is no way practically a 1500 rated player can think like a 3500 rated engine. It just does not going to happen. So even if Magnus plays an amazing game, there would still be one or two moments where it would say, it's a slightly dubious move, or that was even more accurate move, because no one can, a human cannot play like an engine. That's as simple as it. So what when I see students saying, like, the engine was saying this move should be played here, and I just missed it, next time when I get a game, I'll play it. But the concept is, it just doesn't work like that, because you also have to understand why you did not consider that move at all in first place when you were playing the game, or if you considered, why did you maybe reject it? Is there a specific reason why you thought this might not work? So that is where you should be training. But what Stockfish would basically say to you is like, you just missed this move. There was this strong move, you did not figure it out, you missed it, and it will give you a blunder or a mistake kind of evaluation to the move and keep going forward. So young players, or generally to any of the students, I always advise is, if you play a game, input the game on any database, but before you quickly run engine to analyze your game and get like a quick feedback, try to understand the game yourself for a few minutes at least, like where you think you might have made the mistake, and then try to validate that with Stockfish. So it's more like a research. So first you should have an hypothesis, like what you think went right or wrong, and then the engine should come in to validate the hypothesis. But what generally is happening most of the time is, we skip that hypothesis part and we just try to directly like get the answer to the problem. Yeah. So in this scenario, the mistakes will keep repeating in future games as well, because we will never learn what the mistake we actually did. So this is what I would say. One of the things of like overuse of engines or Stockfish for that matter in training by students. And other thing is, uh, if a move, let's say if you're training and you run Stockfish and you see a move which doesn't make any sense to you, in terms of like, you get very confused. Let's say if you see a move and you're like, what is the purpose of this move? That means that that move is of, let's say, a very higher level understanding is required for that move, to play that move in a real game. There have been instances where I had prepared some lines very in depth in the opening, which includes a lot of risk. But when I went and sat in the board, this was in a closed tournament in US, I think in 2017 or 18. I had prepared this very sharp line in French with white side. But when I went and sat on the board, I just could not make that move because I had long castled and I had to go b4. I know that was what the engine suggested to me when I had prepared it. So imagine this: you have long castled and you still want to play b4 with a king on c1. You'll get very badly attacked if things don't go well. Yeah. So in the board, I was so hesitant, and eventually I did not play that move. I played something else after a long think. But I for sure knew b4 was the best move, but I just could not convince myself to play it in that scenario. So anytime if a move that is suggested by engine seems completely like, I have no clue what this move is, or something like it just doesn't make any sense to me, do not blindly think, okay, I'll just follow what the engine says and then I'll figure it out later. It is like, in a way, you're blindly following Google Maps or something like that, and then you end up in a situation where maybe you should not be, because you just followed the map direction alone. You did not also additionally use your general common sense or the logic that you should apply in all situations. Yeah. Yes, Adrit, that would be my thought process on this question. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to the next question. If an aspiring chess player could only read one chess book, not an opening guide, but a book on strategy or mindset, for the rest of their career, which one would you definitely recommend and why?
So this would be different books based on rating level, because if you're just starting out, you would have a different book compared to, let's say, you're a 1200 or a 1400 rated player. But in general, if there is one book I would suggest that's purely related to strategy that would work very well from 1400 maybe all the way up to 2000, is Mastering Chess Strategy by Johann Helston. It's a fairly old book. I think it's been published at least 10 years ago, 10 to 15 years ago. It's actually a series of books. He published three books: opening strategy, endgame strategy, and I think like strategy in itself, kind of it. And I believe there was a recent book on the same series that got published, if I'm not wrong, in the last few months or so. So that book is an amazing book if you are rated anywhere between, I would say, 1400 to 2000, because that book talks about a lot of the logic of strategy, and its explanations are very detailed and very easy to understand for anyone who reads that book. So that is what I would suggest if they are in that rating range. And another book which is very very old, but definitely played a crucial role in me becoming a grandmaster as well, I would say, is like My System. So My System by Nimzowitsch. So Nimzowitsch is considered like the father of modern chess, and many players actually, they might have read My System as their first chess book or one of their first chess books out there. It was published in the early 1900s. But I actually read My System when I was chasing my GM norm. I had not read it as one of my first books. And when I was chasing my GM norm, the one of the coaches whom I was training with at that point in time, he mentioned me to go and read My System. So it might look like a very silly thing because My System talks about like basic fight for the center, develop your like basic opening strategies, keep your center strong, a lot of castle your king early, these kind of logic, right? But when I started reading My System, what happened to me was, first of all, as I had not read it before, some of the ideas which I knew intuitively, like I was already playing it in my game, but now I also started understanding the theoretical aspect of that logic much deeper. Earlier, I just knew, I know I need to play the right move, but once I read through My System again as an international master, it helped me understand the logic even with much more clarity than before. So My System is like a classic that anyone can read at any point in time. And also with all these books, I would say, especially books that are very old, right, like published, let's say about 50 years ago or 100 years ago and so on, not everything in that book would apply for modern chess. A lot of things have changed, the time control has changed, but certain core philosophies can still definitely be be applied and tried in our game. For example, if you look at My System, they say quite a bit like Philidor is a good opening. You strengthen the center with d6 and so on. But modern chess, we know Philidor is not that comparatively good. You play more of Lopez and so on. So in all these books, it helps you to give a good understanding, but there are some areas where it might be outdated for modern chess. So that should always be kept in mind, and we should take only the things that are applicable to us, and do not really consider the areas which are completely outdated in these books, I would say. Yeah.
Thank you for this answer.
Yeah.
So I'm jumping on to the next question. What do you think is the contribution of Samay, Rana, and Sagar Shah in the chess world?
So the popularity of chess post COVID has been tremendous in India. A lot of good things has happened to chess popularity in India as well as globally, and certainly, we now consume a lot more content in video form instead of books or audio form, and the two major I would say impact people on this in the video format was Samay, Reina, and Sagar, and in general Chessbase India as a team, because they had so many videos of chess, and with so many people during COVID, with really no other entertainment uh, opportunities, right? They wanted to spend their time usefully. This content was their content, their live streams, whatever they did at that point in time. It clearly had a big impact. So we see now chess being much more cooler. Like people think it's cooler to play chess. And for example, if I talk to someone whom may not be directly related to chess in any way, but if I ask them, do you know anything about chess? Many a times they would be like, yes, during COVID, I was following one of the streams of Sagar or Samay and so on. So they might not be professional chess players, they may not be hobby chess players, but if they have any introduction to chess, it is most likely because of Chessbase India or Samay or something like that in the past 2 to 3 years, and so on. So that helps because more the audience grows for a sport, there is more opportunity for the game to grow in terms of revenue, the money that the players can make, sponsorships for tournaments, and everything. So that's, I would say, the big impact of what they have done for the sport. Even though, in some perspective, we can say like, okay, it has made, maybe chess earlier was considered to be a very, elite sport where you had to think very seriously. You don't crack jokes in between moves, kind of it. Uh, but they have managed to kind of convert the chess content into a bit of a chess and entertainment content, which has helped the game to grow popular. So there is still fans for the very classical, serious chess as well, but there are a lot of new set of audience that has come up for this kind of a chess and entertainment mixed together. So which is good, because these are the players, or these are the fans who will be promoting the game in social media, promoting or cheering for their favorite player, and so on. So their role is pretty incredible, I would say, in the past few years.
So thank you for being with us today. This was the last question.
Thank you, Adrit, for having the questions
Yeah.
well thought out. And